Welcome, good to see you again. I hope you've had a good time since our last lesson. Today we're going to look at analyzing cartoons, but particularly in the context of writing about them in tests or exams. So when we look at this, we're going to look at past papers, we're going to look at past questions, we're going to look at some of the techniques of humor, and again we're going to focus on what makes us laugh and why. As we always do, let's begin by looking at some of the terms that you're going to need to understand for us to continue with the lesson. These are the terms. Okay, I'm going to give you 1 minute, so just turn to the person next to you and you need to look at and give as many examples as you can for. 1 is satire, 2 cartoon, what is a cartoon, 3 caricature, and here I think you can give lots of examples. And finally, look at stereotype. What is a stereotype? And give examples. So I'm going to see you back in 1 minute. Okay, so let's unpack these terms: satire, cartoon, caricature, and stereotype. We'll start with satire. So satire is the use of humor, irony, exaggeration. Another word for exaggeration is hyperbole. Hyperbole. Ridicule. Ridicule is like teasing, to expose and criticize people's stupidity or vices. Okay, vices are things that they do wrong, particularly in the context of contemporary politics. So contemporary means what's happening now around us and other topical issues. All right, so there are many examples of satire that you could give. Our politicians are satirized a lot. We have Zuma, we have Malema, we have the EFF, we have the DA, etc., etc. So what we have is we have cartoonists making a point or giving their opinion about what is happening politically. So that is what satire is. Then we move on to what is a cartoon. So it's pretty self-explanatory. But the points we have here, a cartoon is a drawing. Okay, or a sequence of drawings, usually showing a humorous situation. Okay, cartoons are, here I'm doing some editing, are mostly accompanied by captions. Okay, so we have words. And what happens again with cartoons, often they're associated with what's happening in our country politically. Okay, and that's how they often link back to satire. Then the next term that I wanted you to look at is caricature. Okay, so what is caricature? And if you have any artists in the class, this is quite a fun activity to do. Ask him or her to do some caricatures of people in the class, or even your teachers if you want to be naughty. So what is a caricature? A caricature is a drawing, okay, and it exaggerates and it distorts. Okay, to make something bigger or make something funny. And obviously, again, the intention is to create humor and to get some kind of message across. Okay, and most often the features of the person are exaggerated. So, for instance, Tutu, he's short, but he would be drawn very, very short. And Mandela is tall, so he would be drawn very, very tall to accentuate their physical characteristics. And again, we often have it in the political context. Okay, that's the purpose. And that's, yeah, to convey a stereotype. So let's look at the next term. Okay, what is a stereotype? Now, a stereotype is a generalization. Okay, so you make you make a judgment and you say everybody is the same, everybody of this group is the same. And generalizations are always oversimplified, okay, because they put people into groups and they say everybody in this group is like that, or everybody in the country is like that. And I think what stereotypes allow the cartoonist to do is to just give a very quick picture of something. And what are stereotypes? Often based on people's prejudice. Now, the word prejudice is made up of pre and judge. So before you know the person, you judge them. Pre means before. Okay, so we have stereotypes are often based on people's prejudice or ideas that they normally don't have proof of. So all lawyers tend to be deceitful or deceitful. Okay, and I think we have probably quite a few stereotypes in our country. All white people can't dance, which is so completely untrue. If you go to a club, you'll see some white people really dancing well, etc., etc., etc. Okay, so what a stereotype allows somebody to do, or a cartoonist to do, is just put something across and often challenge that stereotype. Okay, because stereotypes are prejudgments. I then wanted you to look at the examples of those, and I hope that you gave examples. And what's nice to do if you are connected to the internet or you have access to newspapers is to read as many of those cartoons as you can. And those will be the examples that you can give, even in tests and exams. All right, so you get a cartoon, whether you're looking at it at home or whether you're sitting in a test or exam situation, and there are elements that you need to pay attention to. And these are the body language. Okay. How is the person being depicted in that cartoon strip? How are they sitting? Okay, are they upright? Are they slouching? And what does this say about the character? Okay. Then the gestures. Gestures are hand movements. What hand movements are the different characters using? So are they definite and firm, or are they unsure? So all of those elements that are elements that you can look at. And what's important to note is, even though it's a static picture and you've got your different frames, the cartoonist can make a gesture look like it's moving, or a character look like it's moving, by using motion lines. Okay, cloud dusts, little lines, etc., etc. So all of these elements will help you see the character moving, and they'll also indicate how the character is moving. Facial expressions are a giveaway, and there we'll look at the eyes, we'll look at the mouth, we might even look at the different profile. Verbal communication, what is being said in the cartoon? So often you might have a speech bubble, okay? You might have the character thinking, all right? If a character is really cross, you might get a speech bubble that almost looks like a star. So all of these are indicators about what is being said. Tone. Now, tone is the same as attitude, okay? What is the attitude of the character who speaks? All right. Is the character angry, irritated, happy, etc., etc., etc.? And that will give you another indication. Scale. How big is the character? How small is the character? Remember, I spoke about Tutu, I spoke about Nelson Mandela. And often two characters are put next to each other, with one being very big, one being very small. And that says a lot about their relationship. So look out for that. And finally, as I've just discussed with you, we have our speech bubbles and we have our thought bubbles. What are our characters saying and what are our characters thinking? Font. Look out for the font size. Also look out for caps. All right, so often caps are when a character is shouting. And the shouting, the letters might also be in bold. So look out for those features. So let's carry on. What we're going to do now is just very quickly together, we're going to look at this cartoon. I'm going to go through it with you, and then you're going to have a turn to do your own. So here we have our cartoon, and we ask the question, explain what the children are doing. So have a look. Okay, the two children, they're sitting behind a table. They're obviously selling something. Okay, and they're selling hair products. Then we go to frame 2. Remember, always take note of the frames, because the questions will often be in frame 2, in frame 4. In frame 2, we've got the mom coming in, and she sees that, whoops, they're selling her hair, they're selling her brush, they're selling her clips. And then she says, these are my barrettes. Look for clues. Under here you can see barrette is an American term. And then she does something. Obviously she scares the children and she's angry and they run away. So, simple. Explain what the children are doing. All right? The children are selling their mom's hair clips and hairbrush. Okay, the hair care products. Next question. Correct 2 spelling mistakes in the first frame. There are actually 3. We have assorted, and we have care, and we have products. So you would just correct those. Then, the next question is, describe the 2 different emotions felt by the mother in frame 2 and 3. Now this is where you can look at gesture and facial expression. So here she has, this brush is actually pretty nice. And here she has kind of an expression of surprise, maybe disbelief. The third frame, here we have an expression of anger. She's got her mouth wide open. Also, we've got her hand open, and here we've got gesture lines. You see these little lines here, and they show her possibly throwing up these barrettes. And that's, when you discuss it in a test, always make sure that you justify it by going back to the cartoon and saying, this can be seen by the lines next to her hand, etc., etc. All right. In what tone of voice are the words spoken in frame 3? Give a reason that the mother feels this emotion. What do these tell us? If we look, so these are barrettes. Wait, okay, we've got caps and we've got bold. This is all my stuff. And then we've got an exclamation mark. So all of these give us a clue as to how she's saying it. So how they're spoken, she's angry, she's irritated, she's shocked. And then give a reason that the mother feels this emotion. Well, her kids are selling her hair products. Okay, so she's angry. And again, remember, go back to the cartoon and justify your answers. And then finally, in your own words. All right, as soon as you say in your own words, take note, because it must be in your own words. Explain how the children intend to calm their mother down. So here we get an indication of this in the last frame. We'll give her a commission. So you need to write that in your own words. So you can't say the children said we'll give her a commission. Rather say the children say that they're going to share the profits with her, etc., etc. So that's you answering these questions. And remember, this is an example. This is an example of a question from a past paper. So you'll get similar questions like this. Now, what I want you to do, this is the last one, sorry. Do you think the mother will accept their proposition? I don't know. I think not. Okay, and then you need to give a reason for your answer. Why is she not going to accept getting a commission? Well, she's not going to get the full value of her hair product, so that would irritate anybody. Okay, now what I want you to do is spend 1 minute analyzing this cartoon. Okay, have a look at the gestures, the words, the facial expressions, etc., etc. And I'll be back with you in 1 minute, and then I'm going to ask you to answer some questions that are based on this. Okay, so you have 1 minute starting from now. Okay, so you've had an overall look at this cartoon, and now let's have a look at the questions. The first question, and I want you to answer it, I'm going to give you a little bit of time for each. The question is, refer to frame 1. Okay. And the question is, what is the boy doing with the pencil? Okay, what is the boy with the pencil doing? Okay, and how do you know this? I'm going to give you 30 seconds to discuss it with the person next to you, and then we'll come back and we'll look at your answer. Okay, let's go with that first question. All right, let's have a look at that question. So you want to answer, what is the boy with the pencil doing? So we know that he's writing a letter. So that'll be your first point. He's writing a letter. And how do you know that? It's important that you answer this. Okay, we know that because he's sitting at a table, all right? He has a pencil in his hand, and he has a piece of paper next to him. So you can see here that you've answered the question and you've justified it. Now, before we go on to the next questions that are based on the same cartoon, let's have a quick ad break. Okay, welcome back. Let's continue answering the questions for this cartoon that we have here. Again, I'm going to give you 1 minute per question to discuss it with the person next to you or in small groups. So, we've answered the question from the first frame. Now, it says the question asks, refer to frame 2. And the question is, what does LOL really stand for? Chat to the person next to you, and I've given you 1 minute for this. right, let's look at that second question. What does LOL really stand for? Well, you all know, because you use your WhatsApp a lot, it means laugh out loud. Okay, so laugh out loud. Okay. And this obviously differs to the information that this other little boy has given to the boy who's writing the letter. He says no, LOL means lots of love. Let's go to the third and final question. Again, obviously based on the cartoon that we're looking at. It is, explain why frame 3 is funny. Okay. And remember, when you're doing that, always go back to the cartoon and justify your answer. So again, take 1 minute, chat to the person next to you, and look at the question, explain why frame 3 is funny. All right, you've got 1 minute. Okay, so why is frame 3 funny? Well, here we have this little boy who's writing a sympathetic letter to his gran about the fact that her parakeet died. And at the end, he wants to say lots of love, but he uses LOL completely out of context. So laugh out loud. So here we have this juxtaposition, putting two things together that don't work. So we've got the sincere little note and then the final LOL, which is actually standing, well, he thinks is standing for lots of love, but he's actually laughing. So that's this cartoon. What's important for you is to know that reading and listening to the news and being aware of what is happening around you is very important. It's not only going to help you become an informed citizen, which you want to be, all right? It will also help you to understand what satire is and what the humor that surrounds you, what that humor refers to. And you have access to all sorts of humor. You have cartoons on the internet, newspaper, magazines, which you can look at every day. So if you do, make it a practice, make it a habit. Looking at these cartoons, becoming familiar with what is happening around you will help you in many, many ways. So, one important way that will help you is to understand parody. Now, parody, the important part of parody is that to enjoy it or to understand it, you have to know the original. So you have to understand what is the original, what is the person, or what is the event being parodied. So if we look at this cartoon, we have Madam and Eve, and there were a series of these cartoons where the real South African nursery rhymes were being dealt with. And in that, what was being parodied was obviously the original nursery rhymes. So what happens here in Madam and Eve? We have little hijack Horner. So already we know it's going to be referred to crime and hijacking. Sat in the corner watching the cars go by. He stuck in his thumb and pulled out a gun and said, "Give me your car keys and die." So it's a parody and it's satire. Okay, it refers to the crime in South Africa. But what is it parodying? And here we can see this is the original nursery rhyme. Little Jack Horner sat in the corner eating a Christmas pie. He put in his thumb and he took out a plum and said, "What a good boy am I." So those are two very contrasting texts. Another example of parody, and something that you would only be able to appreciate if you knew what was going on, is at Nelson Mandela's memorial. There was a sign language translator, and what in fact happened was that he didn't know how to translate into sign language, and his movements, the signing he did, was actually nonsensical, which was obviously very insulting, particularly to the deaf community. So we have satire, and what comes out of it is a meme. Okay, and here we have this translator signing, and what's he saying? And this is exaggeration, this is hyperbole. Merry, nude, disco, basketball, everything to sport. Wish we all the spaghetti, salmon, this umbrella. So what this is emphasizing is that what he was signing made absolutely no sense. And here we've got Man of the Year. This is a parody, okay, where the Man of the Year, he signed at Nelson Mandela's funeral, and they spoke about him accomplishing feats that no man dared to do. All right, and that's sarcasm, okay, because what he did was actually nonsensical and took absolutely no skill. So you need to know what's happening around you. So let's have a look at this. I want you to get into small groups, and I'm going to give you 1 minute. There are 2 cartoons. This first cartoon was published on the 14th of April. So the 14th of April. All right. And the second cartoon was published on the 19th of April. Okay. The 19th of April. I'm not going to say anything more about these cartoons, but in your groups, I want you to spend 1 minute discussing this. All right. Does it ring any bells? Is there anybody who knows what's happening here? So you'll spend 1 minute on that, and then you're going to spend the second minute on this one. Okay, so let's use those 2 minutes productively. We'll start with cartoon number 1. Enjoy it. Okay, so you've had your discussion. Let's have a little bit of feedback. We can go back to the first. Right. And there's a context which we need to understand. The context for this is on the 14th of April, Zapiro published this cartoon. Okay, it was just after Kutsia, our new coach, was appointed, and Zapiro was saying that our new coach has to juggle. Okay, he needs to juggle transformation with having a winning team, which is a pretty hard task. So he published that, and then just after he published that, he was criticized, okay, by our sports minister, Fikile Mbalula, who said to Zuma, you know what, in fact, your last cartoon was racist and insulting. Then Zuma responded to that, and he responded obviously in this cartoon, but also with a letter. And he wrote the letter to the minister, and he says, "Dear sports minister, with a little imagination, we can catch them both. Optimistically yours, Zapiro." So he was basically saying to the minister, you know what? We don't have to separate the two. If we work together as a nation, we can have a winning team, and we can focus on transforming our country and sport. So this is the context that you need to understand, and obviously knowing what's happening in the news will help you with this. But let's now look at the actual cartoon and look at the gestures, etc., that Zapiro has used to achieve the effects. We have cartoon 1 and we have cartoon 2. And what I want you to do is compare the two cartoons. And what we will do is we will look at body language, gestures, facial expressions, verbal communication, the tone of voice, the setting, and if we scroll down a little bit, the scale. Okay, I'm going to put scale up here, just so that we can fit it all onto one page. All right. I'll scroll up a little bit, and there you can see the two cartoons. I'm going to give you 3 minutes for this because it's quite a long activity, and I want you to very carefully look at these different features. And then when we come back after the 3 minutes, I'll give you a little bit of feedback from myself. Okay, so enjoy the 3 minutes and look very carefully at the clues. Okay, so let's compare these two cartoons. We want to look at the body language. Body language of cartoon 1. It seems as if he has no direction. Okay, the clouds, the dust clouds behind him show he's running in, but there's no certainty in terms of what he's going to be catching. The second one, there definitely seems to be a determination. Here we have Fikile Mbalula. He's always almost horizontal. The speed lines behind him show a fast movement. So again, we can show the difference. Gestures, what do we have here? We have our coach, our rugby coach, with his hands up, almost in despair, not being able to juggle the two. Whereas in the second, we have a very firm and fast grip of the two rugby balls, the one being transformation and the other winning. Facial expressions, what do we have? We have a look of despair. We have him looking up, again, not knowing what to do, not looking happy. Where on the other hand, we have Fikile Mbalula almost looking at the try line. So he has an absolute definite purpose. Verbal communication. What do we have on this cartoon? We've got people shouting, okay, to Kutsia, and the people are saying, catch, all right, it's in bold, there's an exclamation mark. Here, in the second cartoon, we have a letter from Zapiro, and he says, Dear Mr. Sports Minister, with a little imagination, we can catch them both. Then what's the tone? There's a difference in tone. The first is, it's almost desperate, okay, this urgent need to join the two. And the second is, I think we could say it's a little bit defensive, because Zapiro is defending his position. Maybe a little sarcastic, with a little imagination. He could be suggesting that Fikile Mbalula needs more imagination. And I think there's a positive tone in there, optimistically yours. And then our setting is the same in both. Okay, we have the rugby coach on the rugby field, and we have our scale. Okay, we have the characters are the same size, but the rugby balls are bigger in proportion to the two characters, which basically means, or could be accentuating or highlighting the fact that these two issues are big, important to our country, to South Africa. What we're going to do now is we're going to go to an ad break, and then we're going to continue analyzing cartoons. Welcome back. Let's carry on looking at humor. What I have here for you is a cartoon, again by Zapiro. And obviously when we look at a cartoon, first get an overall feeling for it, and then there's some very important questions that you can ask that will guide you in understanding the actual cartoon. So let's have a look at these questions, and then we'll go back and analyze the cartoon in more detail. What are our questions? Our questions are, what or who is the cartoonist satirizing or making fun of? Question 1. 2. What message is being communicated? The third is, what types of humor, okay, what types of humor does the cartoonist use? Does the cartoonist use caricature? And if so, what characteristics are being exaggerated? Let's answer these questions by going back and looking at this cartoon. So the first is, what or who is Zapiro satirizing? Well, here we have Oscar Pistorius. This is obviously after the incident where he killed Reeva Steenkamp. And what is Zapiro saying? Okay, so what he's saying, and that's the next question, what message is being communicated? Well, very, very obviously is these words here, where he's taken icon. Okay, Oscar Pistorius used to be our icon, used to be the world's icon, somebody who we all looked up to. And now what's happened? He has become a con, all right? And that's been the shift in our view of him because of what he did. The next question is, what types of humor has the cartoonist used? Well, we've got dark humor, where he's crossed out the eye with a blood splatter. That obviously refers to what happened to Reeva Steenkamp. And he also uses caricature, which Takes us to the second last question. Does the cartoonist use caricature? Yes. All right. And then what characteristics are being exaggerated? So here we have Oscar Pistorius. His physical features are caricatured. He's got that very defined jawline. He's got his very strong arms. But also his posture is being caricatured, where he's very down in the mouth, depressed because of what's happened. However, that is questioned again. Does he really feel like this because he's a con? Is it for show? Also, what's being caricatured is the amount of trophies or the amount of medals that he has around his neck. And again, this is contrasted. Con medals. So that's what Zapira is saying. And these are cartoons, like I said, these are cartoons that you can see and read and enjoy in the newspaper, on the news, every single day. So familiarize yourself with them. Our next part of this is to go back and have a look at a past paper, a question from a past paper. And just look at how these questions are structured and how to structure your time in accordance with the mark allocation you get per question. So here we have our cartoon, and it's the Pajama Diaries. And always they give you a little note just to explain. If you need the explanation, we have a woman on the telephone, she's the mother, and the children are behind her. So they give a context for that. The questions that follow are always going to refer you to a frame. And the first question is, and I'm going to give you a minute per question to discuss it amongst yourselves. The first question is, give a visual clue, okay? Take note of that visual, nothing to do with words, that the woman is struggling to hear the person on the telephone. Okay, so that's in frame 1. I'm going to give you 1 minute. What visual clue in frame 1 indicates to us that this woman is battling to hear the conversation that she's having on the phone? Okay, so your 1 minute starts now. Okay, let's answer that question. Okay, give a visual clue that the woman is struggling to hear the person on the telephone. I would say that, first of all, she's using her hand to cover the one ear. And you might also want to say something about her eyes are wide open, like she's trying to concentrate on the conversation. The second part to this question, and I'll just answer it for you, is why does the woman say excuse me to the person on the phone? And this is part B of the question, so you know A and B are going to relate. And we say why she's saying excuse me, and this links obviously to the verbal clues. Well, she says excuse me because she's battling to hear the conversation. Let's go to the next question. Our next question referred to frame 2. So here we have our frame 2. Be very careful. I know I've said it a lot, but be very careful that you always go to the correct frame. And the question is, how does the cartoonist show the mother's anger? Okay, that's what you're going to be looking at, the mother's anger. Name one verbal clue and name one visual technique that the cartoonist uses. Again, I'm going to give you 1 minute. Remember to focus on frame 2, and after the minutes, we'll come back and then we'll discuss it together. Okay, so again, your minute starts now. All right, so how do we know that the mom's angry? Okay, so in terms of the verbal, we have her shouting, we've got her hissing like a snake. You can even add that the letters are in bold and in caps to emphasize her anger. In terms of visual, we can look at her expression. Okay, so her eyes are glaring, she's gritting her teeth, and there again we have the motion lines to show that she's quickly turned her head around. So explain all those techniques in detail so that the examiner or your teacher knows that you understand the techniques that have been used. Our next question is, compare the body language, and again, we've got frames 1 and we've got frame 2. Compare the body language of the children in these 2 frames. And again, you need to look at the context. What is the context in frame 1? What's happening? And what is the context in frame 2? When you do this, and you're going to have a minute, what I want you to look at is the gestures, the facial expressions, the posture, and also have a look at the lines around the two children, and think about what are those lines mean. Okay, so 1 minute, have a look at frame 1 and frame 2. All right, so let's look at the 2 frames and the children. The first frame, you could say that they're playful, their postures are relaxed, the girl's pointing to the boy is an indication that they're laughing, that they're shouting, but playfully. In the second frame, the moms shouted at them, hissed at them, and you can see by their wide open eyes that they're scared. You could even say the mouth. Okay, the shape of the mouth indicates fear as well, and also the posture, leaning back scared. The rest of the questions, I'm going to go through them with you, and here they are. Again, we're referring to the same cartoon, and the question is, what clue does the cartoonist use in frame 3 to indicate the manner in which the children left the room? So you first got to say, what is the manner in which they left? Okay, well, they ran away, they left very quickly. And what are the clues? Okay, so the clues are 1, dust cloud, 2, movement lines, 3, even the pieces of paper that have been blown away by their quick movement. Then, the next question. The question in frame 3 is not grammatically correct. So the question is, you work at home? So you'd have to fix it up, and grammatically correct would be, do you work at home? And then finally, okay, look at the cartoon as a whole. So there you're looking at all the frames and answer the question, do you find the mother's idea of communication humorous? Now this is your opinion. So you may say yes, you may say no, but the important thing is that you back it up. Give a reason for your answer. So I might say yes, it's humorous. Why? Because it's ironic that she's speaking and saying, giving advice, it's all about communication, where in fact she's a bad communicator. She hisses at her children. Right? So we've looked quite carefully at how to answer questions and how to write about humor. And I hope you enjoyed this lesson. And what I want to leave you with is a homework piece. And this is the homework piece. Here we have Zapira again. We have his cartoon. And there are a number of questions. The question is, what is the cartoonist satirizing? You may also say who. What message is being communicated? What types of humor does the cartoonist use? Does the cartoonist use caricature? And if so, what characteristics are being exaggerated? So I hope you enjoy that final activity. And with that, I want to bid you farewell and say to you, read, be aware of what's happening around you, enjoy the humor, and just boost your general knowledge. I'll see you again soon.